warming up, building a dry cow silo. In today's video, I'm going to tell you how we feed these cows, what the future plan is to feed these cows. We're going to have an audience today, all day, and I'm going to tell you some stories about my grandfather on some conversations we had when I was just a wee boy and when he ended up buying all this property way back in 1960. Let's go. And loaded. First and foremost, I should check and make sure they got these doors in. Yesterday I climbed up top there, hadn't done that in well over a year now, and I made sure everything was set, cranked that baby up, checked out the view. Beautiful view up there. A lot of wind. Hey, wind's blowing in the right direction, blowing right at them. Dry cows and heifers down here. The cows with the reddish pink tags, those are your dry cows. The orange ones, the blue ones, those are your heifers, red heifers. First, I'll answer the question, why are we filling this old 20 by 60 silo like we always have? Well, truth is, I put so much time and energy and thought into trying to switch the feeding up at the main farm that Mark feeds down here anyway. He's fine with it. Fill this silo, feed it out. He puts a half bag here of corn silage and we feed them dry hay. It works, and they do pretty well down here. Open concept with all that sun. I think it'll probably be the last year. This silo, very old. It works, yes, but the danger factor, I think I'm going to eliminate it. I might tackle this next. Still got some fine tuning to do up there, and that takes a lot of energy out of you. If you guys farm, you know what I'm talking about. But for the time being, and let me be first to tell you, the corn silage on us, this is the last we've got. We finished up there, 7 bags of corn silage up there. Corn got a little dry on it, but that's okay, because you don't want pump a lot of high-powered feed to these. Down here, the dry cow lot's basically an R&R, rest and relaxation facility. Look at that wind. It was a little bittersweet climbing up there yesterday and putting and servicing that unloader with the boys. Used to do 6 of them, now we're only going to be doing 2, so it lightens the load quite a bit. But if you notice, the blower tractor, that was my old feeding tractor. I got a picture of that when Dad bought that. New used to him, 1989. Looks very similar, but now she's put on light duty. You can actually restore that a little bit. Actually, had it rebuilt, Dad did like 05, early 2000s. Only got 4,000 hours on it now. You can imagine how much he used it back in the 90s. Our corn in the back door. So what's going on is Mark's chopping, I'm filling silo. My younger brother is hauling wagons right up to me. This being full and or cranked to the top, you can't feed out of it. So Greg's trickling them some feed right now. That's a 5065E John Deere tractor, Canadian auction find. Check it out, the cows and heifers are feasting. But to get back to some stories that I wanted to tell you about my grandfather, I've got to start with 4 years ago. Those of you who've been with me know I lost my mother unexpectedly. We all did. Hard to deal with. This day it's not easy to deal with. She was pretty much in charge of all the behind the scenes. Well, that got thrusted onto me, which is fine. With that came all the paperwork, all the information of this farm that she had gotten my grandma and grandpa. Probably more specific, my grandma. Well, so I've got original deeds from all this property that was bought, dating back to '52. Abstract title booklets, if you guys know what those are. I've got probably like 6 of them. So I know exactly when this piece was bought. We're a mile from the main farm. That's where the dry cows are. It worked when it was purchased. However, Grandpa and Dad came up with that idea. There was barn here, well, cement, barnyard. That's how they decided to do it. Well, Grandpa, back in '55, he had 120 acres with the farm, coming down almost about a half a mile. In 1960 is when he purchased this. I've got the original deed. He bought 120 acres, which doubled the farm size. Got the barn, got all their milking. There was stanchion barn inside this whip-proof barn. He's got it all, it's all listed. I've got the original contract between the two. Last name was LeBaire. Pretty sure they're still in Michigan, LeBaire Farm. They've got the milk line, the bulk tank, everything's listed. And he paid $35,000 for 120 acres. That boils down to like $290 some an acre. He put $10,000 down in 1960. And I've got it where the remainder of that deed, or of the title, became paid off. He paid it off in 10 years. That history to me and that documentation is so valuable. To me, it's priceless. When I was up at top of Silo and I panned over, this corner across the street was a different piece. I've got that. That ended up being Dad's first piece he got in 1984. So Grandpa worked his way all the way down and up the hill, and they kept a good relationship, and Dad bought that. That was another 80 that tied it all together. That was amazing too. That I've ended up with, and I've gone through and looked over it, and it took me months and months to finally get it all sorted out. It brings me back to conversations I had with my grandfather. I spent a fair amount of time with him. I probably spent more time with him out of probably the 20 grandkids than more than anybody. I mean, my brothers and I lived very close to him. So we were the grandsons that took the farm over. That's why it's one of the reasons he didn't venture far after he quote unquote retired. But one of the earlier memories, I was probably 12 years old, 10, 12. It was early 90s. Just a point of reference, he died about 12, 13 years ago, 88 years old. So probably, we'll say 30 years ago, Grandfather and I ride around in his truck, strippy F-150, just a basic truck. The guy was very, very successful, wealthy man. You'd never know it. But I gave him, looking back, I didn't know it at the time, I was just asking questions about, like that kid's ass. Like, just, I gave him, looking back, every opportunity to be very boastful and be very, just talk about himself. And he never did. I asked him questions like, well, how did he buy all this? How did you know to buy it? How did you do all these things? And he never once said, because I was better than anybody, I was smarter than anybody. He just said it took a lot of hard work. Just looking back, he was an extremely humble man. So that's why I say with success, is it directly linked with humility? Got me thinking. I mean, he just was known as a very brash individual, or a very hard-nosed Marine, World War II vet, but not braggadocious. Even when he could have told his own grandson, a kid, that I knew before anybody, I was smarter than anybody, I knew how to win. He never said a word like that. To me, that just speaks volume. Back to the silo fill, dry conditions, 15-mile-an-hour winds. I just looked at my phone. Hey, filling 2 silos out of 6. I've had a multitude of parts for that unloader and a lot of different blowers to choose from. Remember when I got these? I got 2 of these big bad blowers, F62B New Holland. We used to blow hay with them. A beast of a blower. Big wide drum, auger fill. I decided, hey, if I'm gonna fill a silo, I might as well use the biggest blower I got on hand. Why not? At least a chance of plugging. I highly doubt I'll plug. Corn blows pretty smooth. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. We'll see what happens. It's just in, I sheared a bolt on a wagon. I had to pull off the side. Greg took it up there to fix it. Dad's down here in his Ranger. He's hauling for me. He's back down on these stomping grounds. A lot of guys ask for Dad helps chop. Mark usually chops. Dad didn't chop a lot once we took over. But he chops a lot of the hay and he does a lot of the combining. You'll see that coming after we get all this, the cow's feed off. Fast forward 8 to 10 years, I'm about 17, 18 years old, late 90s. Grandpa's probably 76, 77 at this time. We were still riding around a little bit. He liked me because I liked to work. I was on the wrestling team, things like that. But I was trying to figure out where I was going to go next. He was a Marine, World War II vet. 2 uncles of mine were in the service, my dad's brothers. That sparked an interest in me, so he said, you know what? I'll take you over there and we'll talk to recruiters. He never once said, I was a Marine, Marines are the best, or you're gonna be a Marine or you're not gonna be anything. He simply said, we're gonna head over there, we're gonna talk to all of them, all the branches. Whoever gives you the best deal, that's who you go with. That was our mentality. So we went over to Lapeer, talked to the Air Force, the Marines, the Army, and the Navy, all in the same day. They were all there, right next to each other, different rooms. We both come out of there, and in the truck ride home, we both came to the conclusion that the Army was probably my best bet. And that's what I ended up doing. And a year, I went into delayed entry. I signed up early. And then in that time, I mean, I started to get a little cold feet. It takes some cojones to leave mommy and daddy like that. Especially when you grow up on a farm, you're so tight knit. But when it was time to go, of course I went. And when my grandpa smelt doubt in me, he looked at me and he said, you sign up, you live by your word, you're going through it. That taught me a lesson, and I've pretty much been that way ever since. And then the fact when he wasn't so stuck on just going to the Marines, it was weigh out your options, be open-minded. Those 2 things right there are what stand out to me. This story another 10 years. That puts me at about 30 years old. And Grandpa, at the end of his life, he's probably 85 at this point. You know, in that this past decade, my grandma had come down and she got dementia. They had to put her in a home where my grandfather, he had 8 kids in the span of 20 years, so he had a lot of help. They went hand-fed my grandma for 10 years. She lived with that, pretty much a wheelchair. But that was pretty sad to deal with. But on top of that, Grandpa, his youngest son at the time, he's probably 40. Now he's 50, 60, still alive. Uncle Jason, the youngest son, got Down syndrome. Tank of a man. Special Olympic gold medalist, backstroke swimmer. But at that point, I spent a little time with Grandpa. I'm almost 30, so I think I'm smart at this point. But looking back, you know, you realize you weren't as smart as you thought you were. I think I'm 40-something now. Every decade, I feel like when I'm 50, I'm going to look back and say, I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. I think this is how life works. So much to learn. But at that point, Grandpa, I'd go and see him. He grew a massive garden over there where he lived. My sister lives there now, but he would spread cow manure on his garden. That's all he cared about then. He had Uncle Jason there living with him, doing household chores, cutting the grass. He had a pond. But Grandpa I wouldn't ask a lot then. He would just offer up a few things. 85 years old, or 86 it could have been, 87. He would just say things like, you know, he knew he was just getting old. He said, get this old, I'll never forget this. To get this old, you've got to be a few things. You've got to be smart. You've got to be lucky. I've never heard him talk about luck before. You've got to be lucky. You've got to be driven. You've got to have something that you want to accomplish every day. And that just stuck with me. But what I got out of mostly was that luck factor. Something we never want to speak of. But I've been very lucky in my life. I'm not afraid to admit it. I never thought about it that way. I used to think that was kind of foolish to say I'm lucky. Coming from him, a lot of truth to that. I've been lucky to be a part of this little farm, lucky to be healthy, lucky to have a good wife. I can go on and on. Right back, got that wagon fixed, it looks like. Total team effort, boys. Check that blower out. Listen to that. That thing's wicked. The boys are starting to stack them up on me. Having corn in your back door. I mean, I'm unloading them pretty fast, but that chopper's just chopping that dry stuff right up. I want to show you some of these cattle. I ever introduced you to our resident pet down here? There's my little crossbred bull. He's been doing some breeding, but resident pet Snowflake. We've got some pretty tame cattle, but this girl here takes the cake. I mean, she's almost too tame. She's like a dog. If I went in there, she'd follow me around, bump into me. But yeah, there's Snowflake. There's your little bull. And here's the rest of them. You see how shiny they are? Due in part to this open concept sun. I mean, they are very clean. I mean, it's the feed and the mineral, but this is our best, fullest, you know, group of cows. Although my milk cows, now that I'm feeding TMR, they're filling right out now. Woo. Dad just took off in his Ranger. Greg's back hauling, so the 3 boys are harvesting. Dad's going to do something else. I don't know if you've been missing the super trucker, but actually got a hernia or something. He's down. Comment below, tell him hopefully he recovers soon. We'll be able to use him. Haul soybeans and corn up to the co-op. Super trucker, you're watching. Get well. let you pet them, but they're not dogs, they're cattle. But then there's Snowflake. Watch them. Well, that's a cow, but Snowflake is just a breed of her own. She reaps the benefit, not you guys. Let me give you a scratch. Come on. How about you? Atta girl. Check this all over real well. New air cleaner, oil change, injector boot. Leaking a little fuel. He's up to snuff. Cleaning that wagon off later on in the day. This is a lean-to that Dad built onto this barn where we keep our skid steer now. It used to be a pen, some extra free stalls. We ended up gutting this barn. We kept the beams in there to tie it together so that you don't fall, but cemented it. This was a stanchion barn where they milked, as they said. Now there's free stalls. This is her watering trough. That's an old milk tank. Probably a similar milk tank that was in this milk house back in the 60s. I can show you the milk house in a second. There she is. I said it before, what a sweet setup. Milkman came in, backed up, put the hose in, had a turnaround driveway. I think the hose port used to be right there. Since then we've sided over it steel, but you guys remember these old milk house windows, barn windows? That's original, boys. Check out that rock. Think she got hit a few times?